All right, test, sound test. We are live. Let's just make sure that people are able to see. Do a quick check on the old YouTubers, YouTube Roonies.
I'm getting access tonight on the show notes.
What's access denied on the show notes?
Mhm.
Really?
I don't know if you made it open for everybody or.
Okay, I'm changing it now. Get shareable links. Copy link. All right. Oh crap, that sucks. Raghav, how you doing? Good to see you. We're getting some stuff sorted out here before we jump right into it. We're not going to jump right into it this morning. We're going to tiptoe slowly in. Does that sound good? Tiptoe slowly
Yes.
in? Okay. We're going to tiptoe.
Like in the tulips. Tiptoe in the tulips.
What is that?
You've never heard that song?
Oh, no. Does not ring a bell. Is it working now?
What?
Is it working now, the link?
Oh, let me check.
Yeah. Just
Where'd
send
you
it
send
to
it?
Facebook.
Oh.
I guess I could put it in here too. Check this out, Raghav. See if it works. It looks like it went through on. So apparently, I can only communicate to people on YouTube, Twitch, and Mixer. Interesting, because it won't let me tweet to Facebook.
Yeah, the show notes work.
Okay, the show notes work. Good. Okay. Let me just see this doohickey here. Dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-da-ba-dum. Dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum. Dum, bum, 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 bum. Dum, dum. Dum, bum. Hello. Yes, I need to go over there. Thank you. Boom, boom. The live dashboard. Yeah, that's not it. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is it. Oh, cool. The stream's current bit rate is lower than the recommended bit rate. We recommend that users stream a bit rate of 4,500. What do you think I am, rich? Thinking up 4,500. I can stream at 4,500. Where do you think I live? South Korea? What do you think this is, huh? I live in America.
Was that your
I live in Panama City, Florida. It's a third world country. Okay?
Chris Matthews impersonation?
Chris Matthews. I don't know.
It sounds like him.
All right, looks like we got a couple people. Litty Joka, one of the oldest viewers here. Thank you for tuning in. Let me just do a little check, make sure the old Facebookaroo is coming through.
Ooh, looks like Ace Raghav already got first.
Yeah, we already got it.
Congratulations, Ace.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Okay. Why is this? Man, come on. Man. All right.
I can't respond to them though, right? Like on this little doohickey, the stream chat.
I think you can. Try typing it in and see if it goes to all
there's
the
nowhere. There's nowhere to type.
Oh, yeah, I guess you need the do-hickamabob. All right, well, if you see anything of interest there,
yeah, I'll mention it.
Let me know. Okay, we're going to dive on into today's essay. And the title of today's essay, for anyone who is curious about this, I've got it, what we'll be discussing today. I've got a show notes here. I'll type it one more time, make sure it goes through. So today's essay is called The Fool's Mental Alchemist. Mental alchemy is what I'm defining as turning lies into facts by the collective delusion of deferred control to centralized power. And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend, legend became myth. And for 2,500 years, the ring passed out of all knowledge. We have this rather precious notion that history has followed a linear upward trend of progress, from ignorance to enlightenment. but it does not take long for any novice student of history to find strange pockets of absolute brilliance bubbling up all over the world in the unlikeliest of places and time periods. Many of these insanely prescient moments of enlightenment were co-opted by existing power structures, diluted, and mixed back into the fabric of society just enough to placate the masses and satisfy the revolutionaries at a superficial level so that the status quo could survive. We all fancy ourselves pretty enlightened in the present day, but we suffer from a chronocentric prejudice that makes us blind to our own superstitions and distorts the past to the point of absurdity. Hypocritical slaves of cultural conditioning, subsidized by the sacrifices and genius of those who came before us, we trade the best of our birthright for the pottage of trifling ephemera. Comparing a presidential debate in the United States in the present day to the writings of Plato and Aristotle is comical. Comparing any of the modern televangelists, godmen, gurus, or papal authorities to the Bible, the Torah, the Mahabharata, or the Quran is comical. Comparing the Marvel Cinematic Universe to Greek mythology is, comical. Haha. We take the best of what has come before us, call it myth, dress it up in iconography, and go back to our lives of subservience and existential dread. Seems legit. The typical atheist in our day looks at religion with a derisive raised eyebrow that would make the most patriarchal aristocrat jealous, but the joke is on them. The religions we ceremonially feed to the lions in the Colosseum of the institution are pointing at the real culprit, the false god, Caesar. Almost all organized religions that have survived for over 400 years share one thing in common: a prohibition against blasphemy. Thou shalt not call a thing God that is not a god. Do not worship another man, do not worship an animal, do not worship the seasons, do not worship a group of people. In the Western world, it was Christians, not atheists, who first chided fellow believers for our stupid habit of filling gaps in scientific knowledge with the intellectually lazy God of the gaps fallacy. It was also people of faith the world over who believed in an ordered existence that discovered every major scientific breakthrough that led to the scientific revolution. From then on, people of faith haven't been so great at it. But Galileo, the flat earth. Don't worry, I'll get there. I have to establish the reality of bullets before I can make them, and by the end of this essay, I will be plugging what passes for religion so full of holes that most atheists will probably agree with my ends, even if they disagree with my means. Don't TLDR, though. You're going to miss out on so many important observations along the way. I'm not 100% accurate in anything I write, and my overall premise may be wrong, but I guarantee that whatever identity you hold is most fundamental to your existence and goals, you will find plenty of ammunition here to use for your respective ends. I promise that much. I'm a member of the proletariat now, so I don't have time for institutional snobbery. If you don't like it, go pick up a copy of whatever Times you still believe in. Have a grand old time basking in their desiccated formalism. A bit of advice: if you spend any amount of time keeping up with the times have left you behind. The ease with which a person of faith throws his hands up and says, "Miracle," has been a powerful motivator for many scientifically minded thinkers to become atheists. But these same skeptics do not do such a great job of recognizing the God of the gaps fallacy when they venture out of their respective fields. They may be atheists when it comes to questions of transcendent reality and metaphysics, but when it comes to politics, economics, education, and social theory, they defer their freedom, intelligence, and responsibility to a God of human proportions. Incredibly smart people can be insanely stupid as soon as they set foot out of their wheelhouse, area of specialty. And they will do whatever a cabal of charlatans tells them, as long as it means they don't have to bother their bulbous brains with more stress. Oh, is the Nobel Prize winner's widow Wayne Tywood? It's 2019. Use the internet. Quit believing something because some pliant pawn bowed before the tired tradition and was knighted as a servant of the dead state. What the hell is this guy talking about? I'm almost there. Indulge me just a little more. At the time of this writing, not speaking, I had way too much to drink the previous night, and my hangovers apparently wake me between 3 and 5 a.m. with the racing mind of a meth head swimming in an ocean of Walter White's Best Blue. Okay, so where were we? Notice how in that Tolkien quote, which you can never hear in any other voice than Kate Blanchett's from now on, that Tolkien says that there are things that should not have been forgotten that happened 2,500 years prior? Well, I wonder what could have happened 2,500 years ago in our own world. Plato's Republic, that's what. The Ring of Gyges is a parable told in Plato's Republic about a ring that would make the wearer invisible. Bilbo's ring. Of course, it's actually Sauron's ring, but that's the nature of the ultimate ring of power. Every blubbering idiot who gets a hold of it thinks it belongs to him, that it was preeminent, that everything answers to it, and that it will never betray him. With his fantasy, Tolkien did his best to distill the philosophical and intellectual contributions of antiquity in an epic parable with three elements that are important to this series of essays, the intent of which is to be a rhetorical munitions factory to arm the individual against any power structure that is inimical to the almost impossible to balance twin virtues of personal freedom and transcendent responsibility. And that's kind of the theme of this whole podcast. Personal freedom and transcendent responsibility. Independent integrity is another way I'm calling it. Basically doing the right thing, not because some power structure tells you, whether it be a god or a government or a business, but doing the right thing when no one's looking because it's the right thing. Now, figuring out what the right thing is, that's kind of the trick, what we're all trying to do. But then on the other hand, to be independent so that you're not doing it out of fear of punishment. Not just being independent from some state, the man, not being independent from a system that is corrupt, but being also independent from corruption within. Being independent from compulsion to act a certain way to please other people, compulsion to addictions that won't let you actually be a good person. So personal freedom, not just as I get to do what I want, I can eat what I want, I can, hurt who I want, and I can shoot who I want, blah, blah, blah. It's not just that kind of anarchist idea of personal freedom. It's personal freedom from destructive, self-destructive, and community-destructive compulsions. Personal freedom and transcendent responsibility. You cannot have one without the other, in my opinion. And the tightrope, that little Venn diagram where those two things meet is so narrow. It's just like a filament. It's almost invisible, impalpable, and transdimensionally incomprehensible. Have fun balancing on it if you don't even have the ability to sense it, let alone comprehend it. But Tolkien's Sauron has given us these rings that we keep falling for. They promise falsely to be shortcuts to freedom and responsibility, but are actually only feedback looping pitfalls powering the dynamo of hell on earth, turning us into Sisyphus, doing unnecessary self-defeating jobs that make us feel trapped like rats in a maze. So who is Sauron in our world? Caesar, the dead state, any centralized power structure. I'm not just talking about government here. I've run into the same thing in religion, in local politics, in business, in a group of people. Sauron is Caesar, the dead state, any centralized power structure that is above the laws it claims to uphold. Watchmen who are not held accountable themselves. Normal men and normal women who have cloaked themselves in the illusion of specialty so they can subjugate people just like them. For the next 3 weeks, I'm going to talk about 3 of these rings of power as I see them, that people use to get an advantage over others, and the ways we can quit being overcome with awe at their use. I'm not an idealist. I'm a realist. Centralized control will not die in our lifetimes. And then there are some ways we don't actually want it to fully die because we're not ready technologically or socially or culturally to really get there. It probably won't die in our grandchildren's lifetimes even. But the die is cast, centralized control, the ring of power, it will die with or without you. You can either dive into the fires of Mount Doom with the solipsistic golems of the world, or you can learn to be free of the addiction to this dehumanizing force that has enslaved every human being in history. You don't need a god to have blood sacrifice to stupid ideas. None of us will achieve 100% freedom, but we can move ever closer to responsible freedom if we just take it slowly and carefully. I hope to see you next week when this essay series will continue with a look at the first kind of ring of power I see being used a lot these days, false humility as a tool to inspire pity so that the bearer will win control. Last week, Judah suggested we have a little time of contemplation after my little essay, monologue, rant, doohickey. So this week, I'm going to play, my innovation this week was trying to get my iPad synced up through the amp into the computer. That's why there's a little bit of a hiss there. Sorry about that. But I'm going to play an original piece. I've got on the stream, you can see this picture, and I mentioned it last week. It's from D for Desmond. And seeing this picture inspired this little piece of music. I've developed it a little bit, and we'll play some violin with it. So, without further ado.
Wow.
All right, I'm joined by Judah now, and let me switch scenes here. Okay, so I've been meaning to do this for a long time. So there's an Indian viewer, Vishnu. I met him at Comic-Con India in Delhi, I believe, in 2015, maybe 2014, 2015. And I was just filming. It was the second. Yeah, it's the second Comic-Con I went to. So I went to a Comic-Con a couple of weeks after. I don't even think it was a couple of weeks. It was a few days after Rohan was born, I believe. That's how dedicated a nerd I was. Okay, and I made a video, and the Comic-Con people saw it, and then they hired me to make. I think they hired me to do a video for them, and then I got to host Comic-Con after that, all because of that first video. So, but at the second Comic-Con in Delhi, I met Vishnu. I believe it was there, and we had a debate about LOL Dota. He was a Dota hack, and I'm a LOL paladin, let's say. Y'all are hacks. We're paladins.
I'm sorry, you're on the wrong side.
Yeah, you're the horde. We're the light side or whatever. I don't know. So, anyways, but Vishnu a while back, probably about 2 years ago, he's like, "Man, you just need to go on Twitch and just practice violin. Like, don't quit trying to polish stuff." So this week, surf was up, and I got to surf the first time for real in like 50 days. We actually had rideable waves. And I was like, on the way out there, I was like, you know what? I just need to do that. So today was the first experiment with that, and I'm going to start doing that a little more often.
And you put it on? You put it on Twitch?
No, just right now. What I just did. So I didn't know how to hook it up properly. I've never tried doing it. So this is like running. My mic is running into my amp, and my iPad's running into the amp, and that amp's running out to the Shure X2U connector. So. So it's the first time, so thanks to Vishnu, and thanks also, thanks in order to all the following people, to Harsh Joshi for supporting the podcast, and especially to the Indian dude who provided the the iPad, the Focusrite iTrack dock that allows you to export from that, and the Loudbox Fishman Artist amp. Oh! Vishnu, there you are. I was just talking about you. Thanks, dude. Use OBS for Twitch. I am using OBS. Is Twitch not coming through? Check it out. I should be live on Twitch right now.
That might be why last time we got no comments on Twitch.
No, we don't get comments on Twitch is because I have been off Twitch so long. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, check it out. I'll share the link. Let's see if it's actually working. It's working. Yeah. Here you go. Yeah, I'm using OBS. But I'm going through Restream, so I'm kind of cheating. So yeah, check if anybody wants to be brave and do something weird. You can go over to DLive see if it's working there. I got the Surfing Violinist on D Live now, supposedly LinkedIn and Periscope. So we'll see if anybody shows up on any of those platforms. But yeah, thanks to Vishnu and to the Indian dude for making that little musical thing possible. So that's my creative attempt. One of the things we're starting to talk about, like last week, I was talking about we really need to put an emphasis in order to be more creative, to put an emphasis on action and invention. But I'm adding into that iteration because it's pretty hard to invent something from scratch. You need to iterate before you can get to the point of actually, being pie in the sky, delusion of grandeur enough to believe you can invent something. So iteration is a better, if you start with an action, iterate on it and just keep that feedback loop going, which we'll talk a little bit about today. So today was my trying to iterate towards playing live music on the internet instead of just live music locally here in Panama City. So yeah, that was that. So what's your thoughts about my first post about the Fool's Mental Alchemist?
That was like an hour ago. No.
Is it already lost? Everything I said already
I should have written
like evaporated into the ether.
So the only comment I have is, so this seemed like out of a place of some anger for you. Right?
Really? Me? Anger? A Ford rant?
Well, it wasn't. See, that's what I was thinking while you were doing this. Is like, this isn't exactly a Ford rant. This is a controlled, because this is a reoccurring theme for you.
Yeah, just keeps coming back.
And it gets I think it gets more complicated in a good way every time, and from a different perspective. And so the idea of mental alchemy, simplify it. Can you simplify it in just one sentence or two sentences?
I think people realized at a certain point that there was a better way to control people than using violence, overt violence, and that was through surreptitious violence, get them in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to do it is to trick people into being subservient. And so that's what Aldous Huxley, so much of what I'm doing, probably for the next 15 years, is just going to be riffing on Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. I'm pretty behind the times, actually. But I'm serious. You read his stuff now, and you're like, why are we not talking about this? This is literally why we are all in debt, why we were all feeling like we're stuck in a maze.
Well, the first place I started thinking about this, the reason... the Matrix was the first place I started thinking about this.
Yeah, right.
I think that's why I loved the Matrix so much, is it introduced me to this idea that we're just part of we're just being lulled to sleep while our overlords reap the benefits from our lives.
Exactly.
And I guess the disconnect for me while I was listening to the essay, it was like we come back to this idea, we're not necessarily prescribing anything, but I don't understand exactly what to do about it, other than reject, or I guess other than the enlightenment of knowing that it's happening. And it's always been my problem with this philosophy that we're being lulled, the Matrix philosophy, what I call it, is like, how do we wake up?
Right.
Even if we know it's happening, it's almost like worse. It's like Cypher, while he's eating the steak, he's like,
still tastes good.
Yeah, still tastes good.
Right. Well, and I think that is one of the best strategies that Brave New World can give, is just to let dopamine take the reins. And again, so when I'm talking about personal freedom and transcendent responsibility, or independent integrity, that to me is the solution. Because if you can be free of your addiction, then you can't be controlled. How is anyone going to control you? If you can be free from compulsion, that means you're not afraid of anything. And that's, the tool of power that was used in 1984 is Room 101. This is this thing, like whatever your fear was. Winston's fear was rats, and they they had this mask they put on Winston's face that it has eye socket holes, and so there's rats in there that have been starved, and they're going to open the eye socket holes, and the rats will be forced to go right towards his eyes and eat his eyes out. So as long as you have some sort of fear or terror, you will be controlled. And if you look at what happened to early Christians, they went willingly into crucifixion and to be torn up by lions. How did they lose? How do you beat a people that are willing to die for their beliefs no matter what? You just join them. And that's the compromise of all transcendence around the world. I'm not talking about just Christianity, but it's utilizing a people's community and leveraging that, like speak their language so you can get in good with them so that they don't target you, so that you can retain your position of power. Like, I think Constantine was probably one of the smartest politicians that ever lived. And people have used that same strategy many times since. Oh, look at me. I'm a repentant ruler. I'm one of you now. Oh, look at me. And I'll talk about this more next week, but a perfect example of that, there's a brilliant scene in House of Cards when it's this is such a great vignette in House of Cards. There's the peach butt on, that the water towers in South Carolina. This is true. Those giant peach water towers that looks like a butt.
Yeah.
And so some girl was trying to take a picture of it, and she went off and died. And so this became this giant scandal, and somehow Frank Underwood got caught in the middle of it. So he goes down and meets with the girl's dad. I might be getting some particulars of this story wrong, but he goes down and meets with the girl's dad, and the girl's dad is like vehement. He's like, I want to crucify Frank Underwood. I want to end his political career. Frank goes to their house and starts making them sandwiches. And he looks at the camera and he's like, see, this is what you do with these kind of people. You just get down on one knee and say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss. And you put them you make them feel like they have control. And then you stick a knife in their back. And that's basically what this Constantine idea is. And that's, so many people use religion for that. There's a great film, thanks to Carol Snow for showing me this one. It's called Marjoe, Marjoe, and it's about this little televangelist kid. He was like a toddler televangelist. They dressed him up in a little suit when he was like 4 or 5 years old. He preached these sermons, and the kid was like dynamic, dude. Like, it sounds like an adult. He sounds like an old televan fire and let me tell you about Jesus, ladies and gentlemen. He's a little 5-year-old kid. He's got this tuxedo on, and he grew up in that, and then he stopped believing. He stopped being a Christian, but he kept doing it. And he said, and so this documentary team followed him around, and he just told them everything. He was like a rock star, man, and he was just pretending to be this Christian, and he just made so much money. The shows were like counting money after the show, and he's like, I really studied Mick Jagger's moves. I started incorporating Mick Jagger's moves, and they show him on stage. He's like, and he's like dancing across the stage just like Mick Jagger. It's fascinating, and so. The Bible itself says that Satan will come as an angel of light, and I think people are way too gullible when it comes to religion. Like, there's clues within every religion warning people about this stuff, right? These type of people. And we just like, oh, Frank Underwood, here, take my firstborn.
I think what strikes me, though, is it's impossible to wake people up by saying, we're pointing this out as a nightmare. I think and maybe my yin to your yang on the show in particular is as you are, as you are pointing out the evil of that control, I would like to point out and illuminate the righteousness and benefit of something else, the positive, because I think it's hard to get people to wake up by pointing out negative, like
Right.
so I guess what am I trying to get at? It's like, if we just keep saying like you're under this bad control, and we have this like negative message,
Mm.
like I don't think that, I mean, to me, I just think, well, I'm just going to go back to sleep.
Right.
It's
Well, and
unless
that's
unless there's something to draw me. What's compelling me out? What's compelling me out of the dream?
well, and that's the trying to get to the creative and cross cultural and constructive thing that I've been talking about. But here's
Mm,
my problem with that is that I've been trying to do this for 15 years and
mm,
nobody will do it with me. I try to
yeah.
make fiction, I try to make music, I try to do this. Everyone's like, "Oh, well, this, your rhythm's off in this." Like every time I share anything that I make, every time
Mm,
everyone's like, "Your diction's off. Oh, your syntax is off. Oh, you didn't quite define this correctly." So, I mean,
mm,
everyone is a snob and everyone is a critic. And
yeah.
so anytime you try to make something new or different, everyone just like takes a crap on it.
Mm,
And so like I have to at least establish what I don't want to be in order
yeah.
to move away from that into something I want to be.
Absolutely.
And what I want to be, I mean, that's why I keep emphasizing that term in independent integrity, personal freedom, and transcendent responsibility. That's what I'm talking about. Now, what is
Hmm.
that going to look like? Well, the kind of stuff that we shed a light on here. So the creative, cross cultural, and constructive stuff we shed a light on. But
But
to
why?
but to
Why? What's
but to
compelling about
think
integrity?
what's compelling about integrity? Well, I mean, kind of what I said earlier about doing what is right because nobody is looking.
Yeah.
Whereas social media tends to, it's just, again, it's like a religion. It's like, oh, look, look at us. I'm doing the right thing. Watch me make my sacrifice to the justice god or whatever. Like it's
Mhm,
just it's an accessory. It's a
mhm,
it's a ritual. So in
mhm,
integrity, why is integrity good? Well, it doesn't just mean a moral thing. It means being tied together. And that's the whole idea of the surfing violinist is you got
mhm.
surfing, which is something that's totally disconnected from violin, but finding ways for these things to cross pollinate. And that's how our brain works. Our brain doesn't work sequentially all the time. Our brain
Mhm.
works in these kind of weird, random, like, oh, connections that are formed. I heard this week that when the lens had been perfected, people were just using it as a telescope, right, to see over the horizon. It was a war tool, it was a scouting
Mhm.
tool. And then
Yeah.
one day, this guy's like, I wonder what happens if I look up. You know, Galileo, Copernicus, like they start looking up with the thing and like, gah, 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 there's a whole universe out there. And then
Yeah.
Leon Leeuwenhoek was apparently like a seamster or something like that. He was like sewing, and
Mhm,
he was using it to like, I wonder what happens if I look down.
mhm.
It's like looking up, looking down, looking around, being circumspect. Like
Yeah.
these are things that individuals do when they encounter something new,
Yeah.
and everyone else says, "Well, you can't use it for that." Why the heck not? Why can't I? And that's why we've gone to the moon, and that's
Yeah.
why we know what a cell is, thanks to these weird people. And again, they weren't professionals in their respective fields. Like in and that's why I'm going to keep talking about the Wright brothers. Like these are
Mhm.
teachers. They
The
invented
sky.
flight.
Well, I think that's good. Like, wake up, you're being controlled. I think that's a good message. Um, because once you wake up, there's like adventures in space and the
Yes.
sky.
Yes.
Let's go explore.
Right.
That's compelling to me.
Hmm.
Because if you say like wake up, because I tell you
Yeah.
to.
No. Yeah, I know, but see, it's just not true. I feel like that's disingenuous because every movie we watch is about bad guys. It's about fighting a villain. Like that's the point. Without a villain, you don't rise to the challenge. Every film is
Mhm.
about a dilemma, and the villain stands as the incarnation of that dilemma. Without Thanos, you don't get the MCU. You
Yeah,
know?
it's true. I think the difficulty with addiction though is the villain is ourselves, and that's a little harder to fight when
Well,
you
yeah,
don't
that's
have
why.
you don't have the horizon to reach for.
Well, and that's why I think again, like some of these subsections we talk about, like going to hell, the
Mhm.
idea of facing your inner demon, and again, that stuff works its way even in Lord of the Rings. Face your Balrog.
Mhm.
Gandalf
Yeah.
cannot make it through the Misty Mountains without facing the thing he's most afraid of. And like for me, I've been afraid when the Indian dude got all this equipment for me. It sat there collecting dust for the longest time because I'm a perfectionist, and it's like if it doesn't work the first time, then I just forget it. Forget it. Like I don't have a problem with video. I will put up something that looks like garbage. I don't care. Like it's just like I don't for whatever reason. When it comes to my writing and when it comes to my video, like I don't care. You can take it or leave it. But when it comes to my violin, oh man, like I can't. Oh, I can't handle. Like I know Jay Smorey's out there listening, being like, Ford, that's just terrible tone.
That's weird. I just talked to Jay last night.
Don't listen to my show, Jay. I know you're good. One day I will be able to have a real duel, a real Devil Went Down to Georgia duel, and I'll be worthy. I'll be in a worthy opponent.
Well, see, I had countless arguments with Jay because I've always been against perfection. I always felt like perfection is ugly.
Jay is a perfectionist that deserves to be called a perfectionist because, dude, that guy on guitar is just absolutely disgusting. Like I just feel judged by being in his presence. Okay, and there are not too many violinists that feel judged by guitarists. I'll just go ahead and put that on the table. But his tone is like, yeah, I'm sure he's still like doing Dream Theater crap.
He's making his own guitars.
Yeah, I know. He's just a monster, a madman. So yeah, so I faced my demon this morning, okay, and I actually plugged this crap up, and so I hate wires, I hate knobs. Like whenever I've seen rock stars, I have never been jealous of them. I have never looked on stage and been like, man, I want to be up there. I've been like, all this stupid equipment, man, screw that. I hate wires. So when the Indian dude blessed this channel with all this stuff, I was always intimidated by it. It's just like paperwork and wires are the two things that are my mortal enemy.
I'm with you on that one, brother.
So, yeah, I just think you have to have a villain to fight, and I don't think that this is a faux villain. But here's the difference. I don't think that it is a Constantine scenario where it's one Caesar. You know, it's a bajillion, and we have a bajillion different Caesars that force us into compulsions. Or that not really force us, but Pied Piper us into compulsions. Like, oh, come over here. We've got whatever to placate you. You know,
I don't disagree with you. I guess it touches on. I have a personal philosophy that it's impossible to have self-determination. It's impossible to face the villain without the princess behind the dragon.
Yeah, I got you.
The gold behind the wall.
And over the course of the next year, I want to do a better job of making that the focus. To move out from under this, like, oh, everything sucks, because everything doesn't suck. All right, I'm having a better time.
And I'm not saying you're coming across like that.
I agree. I think the best way. Well, they've talked about that in these studies with rats that are addicted to a substance. And if they are alone, they remain addicted. But if they have community, then it's like doesn't even matter. You know, if there's it's just that dependence, isolation, like creates that dependence and that need. And the other thing I do want to kind of, we'll get into that in just a minute. Someone asked the question, Piyush asked the question, Constantine from DC Comics. No, Constantine, the Roman emperor who realized that Christianity, these people that were being persecuted by the Roman Empire were actually winning through sheer force of self-sacrifice. Death wasn't stopping them. So he's like, I see the light, and he created a meme that has lived on for the last 2,000 years of acting religious to to appeal to religious people.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's come to be called Christendom.
Christendom, yeah.
Christendom. Did I say Christian? Yeah, Christendom. Yeah.
Right, which ends up, and there's a reason, like in America, I mean, Christians don't like hearing the term, but there's a reason for that word, that phrase, the separation of church and state, because it's not just something that affects the state. I think a lot of religious people don't realize once you mingle church and state, the state infects the church. The mentality, the organizational structure, the ideology, the office politics, the lack of ability to balance budgets, because no one in government knows how to do that. That all bleeds over, and it works its way into religion. So you want at least a gated wall between church and state, and I agree with that. So I agree with the idea of a secular state. Of course, I agree with the idea of no state, but we're about 200 years away from that being possible. But we're getting closer. We're getting closer.
We are.
All
we
right.
should talk more about that at some point.
No state.
No state.
No state. All right, am I like starting maybe to win you over to anarchy, Judah?
Well, you know what? Yeah.
You become an anarchist with me.
You're starting to. You and my brother working hard on it.
Is he coming from the other direction as well?
He's the anarchist, yeah.
Full blown. Sweet. All right. So that's the Fool's Mental Alchemist. Some thoughts on that. So next week I will be talking about false humility as a tool to inspire pity. I'm going to try to navigate this delicately because I'm not going to try to pull down too many sacred calves here. But I think I'll just keep it in the realm of fiction. There's so much good stuff in. There's this one brilliant deleted scene from Game of Thrones. I have no idea why they deleted it. It is like monumental. It is so good. I think I might actually voice act the whole thing between these two characters next week. So good. Okay, so good morning, Addison. Good to see you. Okay, first up, last week, in terms of our links, last week, Harsh Joshi did a contribution and recommended Rebel Wisdom on YouTube. So I got a link there in the description to a video called Rule Omega, and it's featuring three dudes, Greenhall, Schmachtenberger, and Wheel. So this is a really interesting clip. I would say it's going to take a couple watchings to get what the hell they're talking about. But they're using a description of fluid dynamics, or maybe like wave dynamics. So you could think of this in terms of audio traveling, or you could think of it in terms of water. And they talk about the difference between, in conversation, laminar flow and turbulence in discourse. And so what they mean by that is when something's laminar, that means it's like you see water if it flows around like a little pipe or something like that. It's not much turbulence that it might cause. It'll just go whoop right around it and come back. Laminar flow would mean it's just everything is moving in the same direction. But if you have like a jutted rock, I'm not a fluid dynamics expert, so if Rob Cole were here, he could correct me on all this. But if you had like, let's say, a pyramid-shaped rock or some crag coming out of the water in a river, then it creates little whirlpools and eddies and side currents and all sorts of stuff. When the tide's going out on the beach and waves are coming in, it creates rip tides and all sorts. There's all sorts of turbulence. And so what they're saying is a lot of times our conversations, they get turbulent because someone is not letting something go past them. Like they end up like sticking their hand up in the middle of the flow of thought, and it creates all this dissonance. And they said it'd be better, like let's say if someone is speaking and 95% of what they say is garbage, it's just noise. And so they're saying find the 5% that's actual signal that you can attach to and say, oh, okay, well, there's an idea there. It's kind of like what you're saying. Rather than focusing on the villain all the time, oh, everything's terrible. Like focus on the good thing. What is the good thing that we can take and move on from this? And I think so much of our online discourse really is what you're saying. It's really arguing over, the color of carpet when Rome is burning. It's just polishing brass on a sinking ship. It's like, well, actually, it's just a bunch of people being like, well, actually, meme. And, arguing about syntax and diction and crap when, people are dying in the streets or something. So their point is take that 5% and then riff off of it. Find the signal in the noise. And they even mentioned jazz music, how jazz really started this whole phenomenon that we have in the 20th and 21st century, where jazz started to prioritize noise. And from jazz, the next big innovation in this, and you could almost think of it as a regression, was when Sam Phillips and Ike Turner first met, and they were, I love this story, is just like mythic, okay? This is crazy crazy stuff here. Sam Miller, a Southern white dude, Ike Turner, and his group of musicians were all black. They were coming up. The musicians were coming up in this car, this old jalopy. It had rained. It had messed up their amp, and they tried plugging it in. It was shorting. It wasn't making the proper guitar tone. And Sam Phillips heard it. He's like, "Oh, that's it. That's it." And he went and got some like crumpled up paper and put it up into the amp, and accentuated the distortion. Distortion was born in that moment.
Wow.
The song's called Rocket 88, and he loved the sound of it because it sounded like Sam Phillips. He did a lot of audio engineering for live performances for big band crap, and so he knew all these different tones. And so he said, "Man, this almost sounds like a baritone sax." So when you hear it, like it's just to us, it's just a matter of fact, guitar distortion. It's just become a fact of life for the last 50, 60 years. But that's what these guys are talking about. We actually like the noise. There's something in us it's basically it's an act of rebellion against conformity to semantics, And so when you focus on the noise, you're missing the point of jazz. You're missing the point of what discourse is supposed to be. You're supposed, in a way, you should be couching truth in all of this noise. And that makes it fun. That makes discourse interesting. It makes it vibrant. Like celebrate the noise. And rather than sit there and being all, old fashioned about, "You did not use your receipt pronunciation correctly, sir. We do not pronounce our R's in England." This is why we revolted against England. Come on, man.
It comes back to what we talked about in our very first episode, getting to positions versus interests. Like I think if someone is aware of their own interests, like I think it makes for much better conversation, as long as we don't like stick our flag in our positions and just put our, like you said, put our hand out in that stream to interrupt it so that we can have our flag planted there, you know? Yeah. Being aware of our interests and like thinking, like having the wherewithal to empathize with whoever you're talking with and think, well, what is this person's interest? What do they want in this conversation? What do they need? How does that line up with what I need, what I want?
Yes, to collaborate.
Yeah.
And that brings up another thing. I forgot. I wanted to talk about this. Let me see if I can find where I put it. Okay, so this here's a book recommendation for the week. This is from Ludwig von Mises via the Mises Institute. You can find this online for free. Mises' book, Human Action. And he's kind of like the preeminent Austrian economist who took what Karl Menger and some of the other Austrian economists had done and took it to this entirely new level. He provided a refutation of socialism that is just so pertinent 100 years later almost. And in Human Action, he really outlines what he means by a free market. And he coined a term called praxeology, which means the science of the study of human action. And he's basically offering that as a more rigorous way of studying complex cooperative behavior amongst differing peoples. So it's I follow the path of anthropology, and I think that there is a place for anthropology. You do want to understand how different cultures interact, but anthropologists end up getting their head stuck in the sand and don't take a look at the big picture, and don't see how chaos theory can throw everything off. And so, Human Action, Ludwig von Mises, he said this: man becomes a social being not in sacrificing his own concerns for the sake of a mythical Moloch, society, but in aiming at an improvement in his own welfare. So often, people think of that as being greedy, but Mises's point is that it's not a greedy thing to actually look out for you and your own. Every social structure in history has done that. Tribalism does that. Imperialism does that. He's talking about a different social structure in which we really try to fulfill that idea of the rising tide raising all boats. where it's, I'm not just this, we're not using the war metaphor. We're not using the competition metaphor. We're not using the dog eat dog, tooth and claw metaphor. We're trying to think as human beings, not as survival of the fittest sort of scenario, so that we can, like you say, when we're having a conversation together, latch onto the one thing, like, oh, I get that. Yeah, I like that thing. And so it goes back to what Naval said last week about tighter iterations. Like the more that you can compress the iterations, and we do that by focusing on the good thing, on the thing that we agree on, rather than sitting and haranguing for hours and hours and hours about which God is right, or whatever our ideology, like getting hung up on these things that seem like majors, but when you get and take a step back, you realize, oh, we're all doing this one thing the same. We're all doing this one thing the same, even though we worship a different God, or even though we're a different color, or even though we're a different language block. We're all using this iPhone, or we're all using a bicycle. Like find that thing that let's just make this bicycle the best it can be. And Brett Weinstein talked about that in that thing about bicycles, how the bicycle industry had a problem because it solved the problem and it planned itself out of existence. And see, that is kind of what I'm getting at in this whole podcast too. If you specialize, then you end up creating a little ghetto where you never want to get out. And so you create reasons to justify your existence, and that should not be how human beings behave. That is an old way of looking at things. Just work yourself out of the business. We solved the bicycle problem, time to move to the car problem. And, the car problem should have been solved 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Our gas efficiency, Elon's coming along trying to tackle it his way. But nobody else cares because they're getting paid even when they make crappier and crappier products.
Yeah. I guess so invention makes this sort of thing hard, like an inventor doesn't necessarily want to. It's interesting though. I don't know. I'm just thinking of it. Inventors come up with things that you'd never thought of before. So it's the whole idea of fitting into that stream. A lot of times, me and you, we like to not fit into the stream so that we can see an alternate perspective.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, but I think the point they were getting to in this rebel wisdom thing is just to make discourse more dynamic, is rather than just always trying to get into those turbulent places where we actually try to hear the other person out, find that signal within the noise. Trying to find the signal in the noise. What can we agree on, and where can we take that? And maybe that'll take us somewhere where we're like, oh,
that's true.
Now I understand what you're saying. Okay, so maybe what I was interpreting as noise actually wasn't. I just didn't have the capacity to hear it. And maybe what they were interpreting as, same. It could go either way. So I liked that one from. That was just one video. There's a whole sequence of videos. A lot of this stuff kind of ties into the intellectual dark web. One of them interviewed Dave Rubin, and I thought that was a pretty good interview. It's just cool to see people from all over the world kind of coming together and having these dynamic discussions from different perspectives.
Can I tell you that when I saw it in the show notes, I thought it said, this is often a problem I struggle with. It can being sort of dyslexic. I thought it said Rebel Wilson. YouTube. And I thought, what? Interesting. Rebel Wilson. It's going to be, I find her pretty funny.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Rebel Wilson. So let me see. Okay. Next up on our little list there of discussion topics, cross-cultural. So I like to talk about creative, cross-cultural, constructive. Creatively, it was just the song there about Deefer Desmond's inspired photo. But cross-cultural this week, I got an email. It was 10:47 a.m. while we were doing our reverse redaction podcast. I got an email from Bharadwaj in Mumbai, so I'm going to read that email. Hi, TSV. I recently had the privilege of attending a screening of Hazaron Khwache Aisi, my favorite movie of all times, with the cast and crew in attendance. Couldn't resist adding a snap. For some funny reason, I wasn't looking at the lensman. Chitran Gada is, of course, staring right into the camera. Anyway, how as I am wont to do, I went back to check on reviews on the web, and am utterly fascinated by the format of your reviews. Very original. The climax of the film elevates it to the level of sublime in the intensity and insistent emotion it conveys. It certainly tears your heart out. It indeed is a masterpiece, and I asked Sudhir Mishra, the director, to how it came to him. Like all great things, fiction, this one was inspired by reality as experienced in parts by the producer, Mr. Pritish Nandi. He had an interesting backstory about how he financed the movie and how he had friends from college, the prestigious Presidency College, Calcutta, who perhaps inspired some composites in the movie. Sudhir Mishra also told me when I posed the question to him, a director makes about 10 good movies in his life. This is one of them. I saw the movie in theaters 8 times and on DVD later at least 25 times when it released back in 2005. This, however, was a remastered version, edited down to 2 hours. Thanks for the recommendations, Cache. I've already watched Syriana. Interesting comparisons both. So this was a little blast from the past from me. So Hazaron Khwash Esi may be my favorite Hindi language film ever made. I was trying to think about it this morning. Would this fit in my top 5 films of all time? And the top 5 films in my head, man, I don't know. It would be hard for me to pick any one of these above the others. 2 of them are Michael Haneke films. One's Cache, and the other is 71 Fragments and A Chronology of Chance, both of which are really, really hard to watch movies. Like, I don't recommend them to most people because they're boring as all get out, but to me, they're just dynamite, just absolutely subversive in the best kinds of ways. On the other side of the spectrum is Joss Whedon's Serenity. It's like it's just it's probably my favorite, like, actual, should have been a blockbuster movie but was overlooked and failed at the box office.
It was badly promoted.
It was very badly promoted. It's a whole bad situation there. I think Grave of the Fireflies would probably be up there. One of the most decimating movies I've ever seen. And then, of all things, How to Train Your Dragon, the original. And right up there with them would be this film, Hazaron Khwash Esi. Forgive my Hindi Urdu pronunciation is pretty bad at this point. But I've got a link there in the show notes to from Bharadwaj. He's got some pictures of the playback singer, the lead actress, and Pritish Nandi, the producer. You can even see KK Menon in the background in one of the pictures. He's one of the lead actors. Yeah, this movie is just devastating in all the right ways. It shows how idealism kind of crash lands into reality. It's like we have idealism can sometimes be like Icarus, and you end up realizing how made of wax your wings are at a certain point. So this is a fantastic film. I can't say enough about it. I've also got linked my review from back in November of 2015. I did a review. Maybe it's probably my favorite movie review I've ever made. And ironically this week, so there's someone else tweeted at me, just yesterday. Gangs of Sinapur on Instagram, linked also in there. They are talking about a song, which is originally from Hazaron Khwash Esi. And they talked about how it influenced this cover of the song in another movie. And they're talking about the love element, the romantic element of Hazaron Khwash Esi. And someone said in the tweets, I watched HKA because of the surfing violinist. He did a series about the movies shot in Delhi, and I had to watch it after that. So I got 2 shout outs based on HKA this week. So that kind of made my week. HKA is a classic. So I definitely recommend that to any people interested in thinking cinema. All right. So next up on June 8th podcast notes is a constructive tweet. And this kind of ties back into this thoughts about iteration that was mentioned last week. So last week, I mentioned that one tweet from Naval Ravikant. Shorter feedback loops means more iterations, and it's the number of iterations, not the number of hours, that drives learning. And then this week, Matt Pierkowski on Twitter said, if evolved, this you got to put your thinking caps on for this one. If evolved learning encodes info via algorithmic compression. So again, thinking about how you can make your algorithm, your flow chart, how you can make it more and more compressed, take out all the unnecessary feedback loops and stuff. If you can compress that algorithm, we might expect set encodings to appear random. Kolgomorovs, I have no idea what that means. This seems like a probable cause for the unreasonable efficacy of random seed functions, but it doesn't mean nature's encodings are actually random. It also reminds me of a conversation with a Google ML engineer who described to me it's becoming increasingly difficult to differentiate the intermediate encoding states of high-dimensional ML processes from randomness if sampled from outside the pipeline. So what I can interpret with this is way out of my field here, but what I can interpret from that is we really are still just scratching the surface of how learning really happens at the neuron or sub-neuron level. Like, we keep, Elon is talking about how AI is going to take over, and it's already happened, and we'll talk about in a minute how Naval just thinks that that's absurd because we still don't understand so much of what looks random and junk. So much of our DNA looks like junk DNA. I think there's all kinds of stuff in there that we are not reading properly. And so he's saying here what looks like it's random a lot of times is actually not. It seems like a random seed functions, but it's not actually random.
So where my mind goes is like if you pull back far enough. Well, so if you've got a microscope, you can't understand a lot of the things you see, but if you pull back far enough, you see how it fits in. Is that sort of what he's talking about?
I think that could be, like at the most plebeian level, at our level of talking about this. Because no, I'm a plebeian in this same too. This guy Matt Perkowski has got some really interesting thoughts in terms of biology, information, and information. Across like neural pathways, sort of, and so more and more people got to think about this as we try to work on deep learning and artificial intelligence. So we're trying to figure out how these things work, and it's fascinating. And I think the more again that we can study nature, the more that we can study how it's working in the natural world, it will give us some better ideas of how to automate and integrate that automation in such a way that it is not destructive to humanity. And that's why I really want to, like you said, rather than just think of all the bad things, like unlike the Matrix, I don't think when we get unplugged from the Matrix, we're going to find that we're in this wasteland. We're actually going to we're going to walk out of Plato's cave and we're going to realize, oh, wow, it's amazing out here. Like we've been scared this whole time. And it's going to be a pastoral, blissful place. So we got to, it's still going to be difficult, but we got to do some disconnecting from some of the training wheels that have gotten us this far. Podcast recommendation of the week, another Joe Rogan podcast. This week, he interviewed Naval Ravikant, the one I referenced last week. Naval's actually liked one of my tweets. Yeah, last year he liked one of my tweets.
Local legend.
Yeah, that's right.
Ford Sue's got.
He didn't retweet me, but he liked a tweet. So we've actually had a personal interaction. Naval's a fascinating guy, and I don't agree necessarily with everything he says in this podcast. Here's some of the things that jumped out to me. I love this one. This is right up the surfing violinist alley. He says he quotes a friend, "Specialization is for insects." I'm always talking about how specialization sucks. Well, someone else tweeted that, Siddharth Saraswati on Twitter. He said, so he tweeted that, and I said, yeah, I like that line too. Do you know who he was quoting? And he said, hey, this quote is from this sci-fi book. It's called Time Enough for Love by who else? Heinlein. I still haven't read any Heinlein yet.
Oh.
The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. People said I really like him because apparently he's like the libertarian sci-fi author. So I should probably catch up with him. But he said, yeah, he'd heard that on that same thing on the podcast. So Naval, he has just there's too much to talk about. I just listened to this podcast.
What stood out as far as do you say anything that caught your attention?
Oh, just a bajillion things. Okay, here, I'll just read some of these notes. Humans are not meant to work 9 to 5. The information age will reverse the industrial age. I always forget his name. Nassim Nicholas Taleb on communism to capitalism spectrum. That is great. You got to read that. He's like at the home level, I'm a communist. At the the local club level, I'm a socialist. He just goes out and through out and on. And it's really interesting. Outcome inequality. I had that capitalized. I don't remember even the specifics of what that was talking about. Socializing consequences and consuming rewards. And that's kind of what Brett Weinstein was talking about. How we've incentivized like big banks and people who take massive risks with with actual taxpayer money. We subsidize their risk and they're the ones that get the rewards.
Yeah.
It's a positive feedback loop that benefits insider trading, basically. This is one that I respectfully disagreed with Naval. Naval said that since we are so bombarded with stimulus, that really what we should do, the solution is being an ascetic. And me, as the surfing violinist, that's the one thing I disagree with anybody that I listen to, whether it be like Dave Ramsey talking about getting your finances in order, or Jocko Willing talking about getting your fitness in order, or Joe Rogan talking about getting your fitness in order in a different way. I listened to Laird Hamilton's podcast with Joe Rogan, and he's talking a lot about fitness. And my issue is I feel like in a lot of ways it's that once again a person becomes so specialized in their own little corner that they start thinking that is normal for other people. And I think asceticism actually makes you, in the words of Taleb, fragile. Because if I allow let's say I don't eat pizza because I'm lactose intolerant, and I force the people around me to adhere to my dietary needs, that makes me fragile. Because if I don't know that there's, and someone feeds me milk, and they didn't know and I didn't know, well, then that sets me up for being sick. So I just choose to be sick a couple times a week, just to be used to it. It's the same thing like with drinking. Like I keep drinking because I don't want to be cut off from a lot of friends who drink. So it's just, I think temperance is a better solution than asceticism. I think temperance is a better solution than renunciation because it allows you to be in more places. There's just a lot more.
No, that's good. That helps me get an idea.
He mentions this one thing I'd never heard of called Agrippa's trilemma. And that was fascinating. He's talking about the problem of the ultimate question. Zerny, thank you for the subscription. Good to have you back. We got one person on Twitch. One person on Twitch. Zerny, you caught us. Are you still in India? Let us know where you're at these days. Thanks to all the supporters of the channel. Patrons this month were charged for the first time. So thank you for all your support. So good stuff on the Naval podcast. I definitely recommend that.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, where can people go to sign up for the Patreon?
Patreon.com/thesurfingviolinist. If you don't want to do it through, like a monthly thing, you can always do a PayPal donation to thesurfingviolinist@gmail.com directly, or you can do like Zerny or Harsh Joshi's been doing. You can do a donation on YouTube or Twitch. We're doing some experimenting with how we're doing the streams. Right now I'm still using Restream, but I just found out this week that OBS, it was purchased by Streamlabs, which was originally Twitch Alerts. And that little thing that popped up on screen just now is a Twitch alert I made when they were still called Twitch Alerts. Streamlabs overtook Twitch Alerts and then bought OBS. From what I can tell. So now they have the giant ecosystem where they're offering you the ability to do everything natively and have your own website. So we may be making a switch over to Streamlabs. I've been really thankful for what they've done with OBS. They've offered that for free. I think it's totally open source. It is fantastic. I love OBS. So thank you, Streamlabs, for all that. One more link this week, and then we'll go through the chat a little bit. I was going to read some Brave New World, but we're not going to have time.
There'll be plenty of time. in this podcast to read Brave New World.
It's just, yeah, I got a pretty cool scene there too. Okay, below the line curation, and I'm calling this. That means people that they're not made men, as they call them, good fellas. You know, none of us are made men here, basically. So this one I wanted to share. It is from Atul Das Prabhu, and he's got a cover of Dil Diyan Gala. It's only got 893 views on YouTube. This is Scandalous. Great voice. This is a great Bollywood cover, unplugged with a guitar, no nonsense. Wonderful stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and share the link in chat as well. You can also go for all these links into the doobly-doo show notes. But check him out. Just this fantastic little cover here. And he doesn't have enough views. I mean, get this guy some subscribers. I just subscribed to him. He's only got 109 subscribers, man. This is criminal. This is actually, it took some time. Like, actually had someone film for him. He's performing publicly. And the sound quality is perfect. It's great stuff. Good. Okay, let's hit the old chatteroo here real quick. So there was a couple things I wanted to say. Yes, so Jared, he said, Pycelle in Taiwan. You got it. Pycelle, did I share that with y'all, or did you just read my mind?
I think Jared's
he just reads my mind. He knows what I'm thinking before.
He's a Game of Thrones expert, so.
Man, that Pycelle Taiwan scene. Come on now. I'm gonna work on both of them. I'm gonna have it ready next week. What I'm gonna do. Here's my thought.
Okay.
I'm gonna have Taiwan recorded. Oh, no, so how would I do it? Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll record Pycelle with my neck beard, like on one side of the screen, right? I'm distant noble servant of the king, my lord. Oh. And then I'm going to have Taiwan on the other side, shaved, and I'll be cutting the fish. What do you think?
That sounds good. But that means you have to shave.
Oh, I got to shave. Dude, this thing is absolutely stupid. I mean, like, I'm setting some record here of dumbness. Like, it's got, like, flares on the side of it. I look like a basilisk. I look like a freaking, what is the one, from Jurassic Park? A Dilophosaurus. I look like a Dilophosaurus. All right, so... we actually had personal interaction. Personal interaction, and you went, yeah. Hey, it was personal. It was Tweedle. Hey.
Tweedle.
Hey. He'll recognize me. He'll recognize me one day. Tell me more about it. Asks, what do you think could things such as deep fakes do to people? Oh man, it's all over, man. It's all over. Like, deep fakes changed the whole game.
Deep fakes have become more and more popular too, and not just for like. I keep seeing these things where people will do impressions and they'll put the person who they're impersonating
on. Dude,
yeah,
it's over, man. You can't trust any video anymore. Any photos, any videos, they all mean nothing at this point. There will be, in about 5 years, you will not be able to tell the fake from the real. And it's great. It's great. So now people can't lie with video anymore. I love it. I think it's fantastic. People have been lying with video and film for, I mean, it all started, the first real documentary we have was called Triumph of the Will, Leni Riefenstahl, a propaganda piece for Hitler. Yeah, documentaries suck.
I love it. I love it when remember that clip of Nancy Pelosi came out and everybody freaked out because it was doctored. He slowed it down.
What? Yeah, that whole thing. I honestly can't even listen to that stuff. Like, that is 100% noise. There is no signal in those kind of things. Like what's happening right now with Vox and Crowder and like 100% noise. Like, that's where I agree with you. I can't even talk about it because it's just so self-defeating and stupid. Like, it's just a new religion, man. It's like, oh, you said a blasphemous thing. Oh, I'm melting inside. Are you people that weak? And here's the other thing. PewDiePie said this yesterday. Our greatest commentator, our greatest news commentator on planet Earth, Mary Ham, Gloria Borger, PewDiePie. That's the state we're in, lords and ladies. That's the clown world we're in. He says, these people are such idiots that are complaining about Steven Crowder. They do realize that it's the Streisand effect and it's only going to help him.
Yeah.
Like even PewDiePie was made uncomfortable by what Crowder was saying. And I was made, to be honest, I was actually made uncomfortable with certain things taken out of context.
He often
he's
makes me uncomfortable.
He's a douchebag. But I think douchebags still have a right to talk online. And so PewDiePie's point is it's the Streisand effect. By them writing all these posts, that's just great marketing for him. You think blue collar workers will give two craps about your speech codes? They're like, oh man, I'm gonna go support Crowder now. I'm gonna support Crowder now. Let me get my hot daddy light or rest of me some Crowder.
Do you think is Crowder trying to get into the intellectual dark web?
I don't know. Can he really be called an intellectual?
That's my biggest problem. He owns. I like the fact he owns the moniker of being a comedian rather than any kind of intellectual.
I'm going to speak in my full capacity as a neck-bearded pseudo-intellectual hipster. He's not allowed in the intellectual dark web. He lacks the, let's say, the certain amount of, how shall we say, vocal fry to be part of the intellectual dark web.
All right, this podcast falling apart.
Zerny said, nah, I just spent 2 weeks there, back home, left my home of Portland, Oregon, moved to Kansas City, just getting set up here. Oh, wow, man, you've been all over the world. Oregon to Chennai. I think you said you were going to Pune. And then to Kansas City. Pumping gas is weird. Oh, that's right. They don't pump gas in Oregon. I always forgot about that. This guy ran out. I was there at 5 a.m. I was doing a trip from visiting with Jared. And this guy comes out and pumps my gas for me. I'm like, what are you doing, man?
Oh, yeah.
It was so weird. It was surreal. That is... Pumping gas is weird. So is sales tax. Yeah, dude, come on down to Florida. You'll just become a weird Florida man like me. There's no sales tax here. You still do have to pump your gas. You should miss home because Oregon is fantastic. I love Oregon. Yeah, man.
I've never had any engagement with Oregon. Well, I had a friend. Do you remember Brandon Reynolds? He lives in
Oregon. Yeah, I remember Brandon. Yeah. Oh, I love it, dude. Pacific Northwest. That's the dream, baby. That's the dream. Just too expensive.
Let's move the whole podcast down. Come on, let's go.
Let's just go. Left coast. Any workout suggestions for depression? Well, last week I had that little doohickey. This is the weird one, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm calling it Dubstep's cadence runs, and I still haven't posted that video. I did not have time to do one this week. But I've got this. It's basically, it's like, you got a little music that you listen to, and you run to it, and hopefully, if you don't like dubstep, this is not going to be good. So maybe find something else. But my idea here is to do an alternative to like these Peloton workouts that you pay a monthly fee and you get access to something like a guy that's going to motivate you, okay, let's run. We got to kick it in. Got to get that pace up to 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Come on. Okay, now we can really dial it down, man, to 7:45.
I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, it's basically like, those old Taibo things. You got the personal trainer, but now you can carry the personal trainer with you. Or if you're really rich, you can get that bike, the Peloton bike. It's like $5,000 or something like that. And then, I don't know, I'm just kidding. You haven't seen those commercials, the Peloton commercials?
I don't watch TV.
I don't watch TV either, but they always show up on Hulu and I think they even show up on YouTube.
I definitely don't watch Hulu.
Oh, okay. Do you pirate everything, Judah?
No.
Oh, you are an anarchist.
Hey, I would say deep breathing, like practice different kinds of breathing, so important to combat anxiety and depression.
Yes. So I did that breathing stuff for about a year. Dr. Frank Merritt here locally, Vitality Pro, and they really did. It has helped a lot. Like I've lost my temper a lot this week, and so I have two strategies now. I'm not saying that they're the best, but I basically go into a Tourette's fueled rage of saying the F word at the top of my lungs when I'm alone in my car, and then I deep breathe, and then I get it out of my system, and I'm good. And I hit my head on something, that actually doesn't make me cuss because I've already got the cussing out. I'm like, I just stabbed myself in the back with nails from the roofing nails. But I've already gotten my rage out. Everything feels good. Breathing really is good. I mean, honestly, like if you can find someone who does yoga without all the pomp and circumstance of it, I think that stuff is really good. I mean, it's blowing up over here. You want to talk about cultural appropriation? You got all these whitey 5-0s. Namaste. Yeah, I mean, well, they can't pronounce Hindi at all, and they pretend like they're freaking gurus, like trained by like the god of yoga themselves. So anyway, like, namaste, Devion or Sajino. So, but you've got access to the real deal. I'm sorry, Gauri. I think I said your name wrong. But if you do have access to that, I think yoga really is a cultural treasure. That's something to definitely look at. And the breathing that they offer is a lot of what these Western things are doing is riffing off of that. The funny thing about what Hawaiians, the native Hawaiians would call Americans or Westerners, white people coming over, they called us howlies, which means without breath. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. So breathing, I think, is a good one. And running. I'm just getting into the running thing because it's easy. It doesn't take any special stuff. Don't go to a freaking gym. Get outside. Get that sun hitting your skin. Seriously. I mean, you don't want to. If you are in India, you don't want to do it obviously during the hot part of the day, but in the morning, get out there as early as you can. Get to a public park. Go do some laughing yoga. I know that sounds absolutely insane, but
laughing
yoga.
Laughing yoga.
I'm serious. Like, just join the laughing yoga people for 5 minutes and laugh.
That sounds amazing.
Honestly, we made fun of it, but honestly,
who made fun of it?
It's because you're walking along and all of a sudden you're like, some people sound like they're like maniacal. But honestly, I could get into it. I think so.
I love laughing yoga. I'm in.
Yeah, Idiot Abroad, he went to one of them, and it was one of the times where he's like, no, this is great. He was like, most of the time, he's like, I don't understand it. Why do they do it this way? And but this time, he was like, he got into it and started doing the laughing yoga and loved it. It's kind of beautiful. People are almost done. Sorry. People were just fine in the 70s. We knew just enough about the world back then. I wish time had just stopped there. I mean, but there's problems all over the world in different forms. And I think, going back to what Naval said, he kind of feels like that information age is going to take us past the industrial age back into more of an agricultural way of looking things. And what we can do with that is that we can learn the lessons of industry and apply them to certain specific problems, but not live there as moguls, as megalomaniacs who've made our own little empires made out of factories. If you go back to Lord of the Rings, I mean, it's Orthanc, the other tower. What's his name? Saruman. Saruman's tower. Like, all of that is a commentary on industrialism. Like, Tolkien hated the metal city, the concrete jungle. Like, he really wanted to get back to the Shire. We'll never get the Shire perfectly back to the way it was. But I don't know about that. Maybe you're right, Judah. Maybe we will get the Shire back to the way. Maybe that is. We need that, instead of thinking about the encroachment of the dystopian Brave New World, we should think about the possibilities out there in the hills and dales and forests and jungles and valleys and a lot of these new sports and stuff, and that's the thing about surfing, man. It was just absolute beautiful this week. Just being able
Mm.
to be out and smell that. The surf wasn't great, but smelling the salt air, amberjack swimming by our feet. Like, yeah, it's a blessing. Why not do it everywhere is what I say. Opens up more jobs. No, I'm sorry. I don't know what it specifically that was.
We're getting real long here, just to let you
Yeah,
know.
I know. Sorry. Don't live there. Those. Oh, you get no vitamin D there. Everyone's sad and angry. Love my
Oh, in
home.
Oregon?
Yeah, that's a good point. So that is a problem
Mm.
for people in cloudier climates. The vitamin D thing, and that's one thing I definitely would say is try to get outside. Try to get outside when you can actually see the sun. Let that sun hit your skin a bit. I think it'll be very helpful. All right, Godspeed to everyone. We are over time, and we've got another podcast to hit too. Until next time, keep it creative, keep it cross-cultural, and keep it constructive podcast world and streaming world. Thank you very much.